There we go. Well, welcome back to the Progressive Rock Central and the Noble Shire of Progressive Discussion. And today, hats off, gentlemen, it's adequate. We've got Malcolm Galloway and Mark Gatlin, and these are always fun interviews, fun discussions that we have. Um, Another great album completed, and just they keep making these creatively, and they're wonderful. And the wonderful part about it is you learn, or I, and hopefully you will too, learn so much. So you're not only getting music, which is wonderful and all that, but you're also learning something out of the process. So hopefully you do what I do, and that's a lot of this I didn't know about. But you're going out on the internet and you're researching it and you're adding to your knowledge base. And that's what's so fantastic about their music. I'll let them introduce themselves, say hi, and we'll jump into the questions.
Hello, I'm Malcolm.
Hello, and I'm Mark. So I'm the bass playing half of Hats Off and co-producer and do keyboard bits on the albums and a bit of extra guitars and other noisy bits here and there.
And I sing and do the twiddly guitar bits and keyboards and produce and do the mastering as well.
Like most of the songs as well, really, to be fair.
Yeah.
Don't
And the
underscore
lyrics.
that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the tunes. Yeah.
Yeah, and the tunes, yes.
Yeah.
And Mark, I haven't seen him live personally, but I've seen the videos. He loves the jump. And
I do like the jump. The older I get, though, I'm liking the jump less.
oh, really? Yeah.
Well, I like the jump. My body doesn't like the jump. The
Yeah.
jumps take longer to recover from. But yeah, that's just the way I play. I can't play any other way. It's an energetic stage presence I have. But that comes from my sort of younger days as a metal and heavy rock musician, I think, and that sort of idea. So yeah, I do get quite passionate on stage. It's a fun thing being on stage. We both really enjoy the live thing, so yeah, I can't stand still.
And that's why you do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So they have put out a new album called The Uncertainty Principle. We're gonna talk in depth about what that's all about. The album will be released Tuesday. Yeah. This Tuesday, at least March 4th. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah,
On
that's when it comes out on
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp. And so we're giving it some time on Bandcamp and physical release, and then at the end of May it will be on streaming platforms.
Yeah, I
Or
think
general release.
they've already that's the cover of the album, but they've already been shipping out. They received all
Yeah.
and did you get the vinyl as well?
Vinyl's difficult for us just because it's our albums tend to be quite long, so it would have to be a double vinyl, and then it would get really expensive. So we haven't got a vinyl at the moment for this one.
Yeah, we've never actually pressed vinyl. We'd like to at some point if we can, but as Malcolm says, it's the cost, and it would end up being a double album because of the amount of music that we generally do put on an album. It would have to cover four sides.
You hear that, folks? They give you more than your money's worth, and they do. Like I was saying, you don't get just music, which is fantastic in itself. You get a story, and that is what makes every one of their albums interesting and worth purchasing. And so let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys talk rather than me try to explain the uncertainty principle. Let's hear it straight from your voice. Go ahead.
When the uncertainty principle was discovered or created by Werner Heisenberg in the 1920s, he was a German physicist. What he realized was that the more you know about one aspect of a subatomic particle, the less you know about another aspect. So prior to quantum physics, the assumption had been that as your as your measurements get more precise, your microscopes, your equipment get more detailed, that you will see ever more detail, and what you see will get closer and closer to an underlying reality. His paradigm shift was showing that there are some aspects where the more you know, the less you know about another aspect. So there is a fundamental reality is based on a fundamental level of uncertainty at the subatomic level, and that I think was a major change in the philosophy of science. And we, in this album, we followed.
I'm sorry, just to go a little bit further, because you've done a great job explaining that. But prior to his discovery, there were people that said, no, there are certain levels and it's not going to go beyond this, right? You want to explain that part? There was this assumption, like you say, that there are certain limits and places that we can't go beyond. And he opened it up and said, you're wrong.
He certainly showed a new way of looking at how reality works, but one that does include uncertainty as a fundamental reality. So it's not uncertain just because you're not good enough at measuring. It's uncertain because that's how things actually are.
Yeah.
And so the album follows some incidents involving uncertainty in Heisenberg's life, and more generally then in the Cold War, and then later on in personal issues and interpersonal relationships. So we're using the uncertainty principle as a bit of a metaphor for then uncertainty in other areas of life.
All right. Is it just, I don't want to beat it to death, but basically these people, they're all atomic and scientists with years and years of experience. And I think maybe they got too overconfident because, hey, we can now harness the atom and make a bomb and do all these things. We are in control of sort of certainty. And he's coming back and saying, well, maybe not. Is that, why was it so, I guess what I'm trying to say is, why was this so radical? And I do believe it was, but.
Well, I think it tied in with an uncertainty revolution in other areas of thought as well. So also in psychology, we had more understanding that what we think we know about ourselves may not be very accurate, and our memories are constantly being rewritten. In maths, we had Gödel showing that the foundations of maths were much less solid than had previously been thought. This Newtonian predictable clockwork universe was really undermined. And as you point out, there are some ironies in the people who developed the uncertainty principle. There being later on in some of their biographical stories, conflicts relating to uncertainty about what's in somebody else's mind. So you can be an expert in uncertainty in physics and not necessarily that mean that you're particularly good at dealing with uncertainty in the rest of your life. And as you say, with the nuclear weapons, which we touch on in some of the music, and again, how those nuclear weapons are used. So the game theory in the Cold War, how you are decision making under uncertainty, where you're having to think what somebody else is thinking and what their assumption about what you're thinking affecting what they think, and how these can lead to, if you assume that your models are the same as reality, then you can end up with some very dangerous conclusions.
Yeah. Like we're going through right now with Ukraine.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not just, a study in the 1920s or 50s or 40s. This is happening now, and it continues. Yeah. I think you would agree. It's something that continuously happens, and this is why, as you say, it is an uncertain world. And there will always be questions, and there will always be the drive of human nature is to try to find some kind of certainty, some kind of, I want to be safe, as much as possible. We all do. I mean, it's natural. But it's not like that. And that's what I think he dramatically did, was say, it'd be nice. Absolutely. I understand, but that's not how the world works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also the danger as well of people in power being very, very certain of their opinions and, and how right they are in something, and at the expense of everything else, and not actually seeing the other viewpoint, or even questioning their own viewpoint, that they might be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, there is a danger that in uncertain times we have an instinct to latch on to the people who give us the most certain and confident presentations of things. But these are certainly not always the people who have the greatest insight.
No, the ones in the room that shout the loudest get heard the most, unfortunately. So,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll start with the first song. And anything else you want to say about the concept? Because I think you've done a great job explaining it. But or should we just?
You say it's actually in sort of it's a chronological order thing as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Explain that. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, go ahead. No, you do it. I don't want to.
Go on, you.
Well, we've designed the album so that each of the tracks is in chronological order. So there are various true episodes in history that are the inspiration for various songs. Everything that happens in the album basically is in historical chronological order, and then ending up in the now.
And what we're all right. So it begins with certainty, and breaking down that idea that there is a world where everything's going to move like clockwork. And go ahead and talk about that song.
Yeah, the idea was that it was the kind of overview, starting off with a sort of overview of the concept of the album, that in the past, science used to believe in this kind of Newtonian clockwork universe. That if you went back a million years and you measured exactly where every particle was and how fast it was moving in what direction, that you would, in principle, be able to work out the rest of history. That doesn't, though, work if you have uncertainty built into your universe. So this was the kind of Newtonian clockwork model, which is kind of comfortable and predictable, and it gives a sort of solidity to your reality, but it also doesn't appear to be accurate. So that was the quantum revolution. So we used to believe in cause and effect. Well, I'm not saying that quantum physics gets rid of cause and effect, but it's more in a kind of statistical, on average, causes happen before their effects, rather than necessarily having a very strict one-to-one cause leading to an effect. That song basically introduces this idea. Yeah, we used to believe in cause and effect. We used to believe in certainty. The comfort reality stole. So actually, how reality does work with uncertainty built into it is in some ways less comfortable. It's less predictable. You're on uncertain foundations, but nonetheless, if you are open to challenging your preconceptions based on what the evidence is, there is more evidence for quantum physics than just about any other theory in science that's ever been proposed.
And you come out, coming back to the music, excellent. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
About midway through the song, you have this angry wake up, and talk about that, and talk about how, we all need to.
So so it
Up to
starts
that
off fairly
top.
gently, and then it kicks in with
We lull you into a false sense of security.
yeah. So
He
we had to
pushes
deal
you
with
off. It's like,
Everyone's reaching for their volume control, going on. Oh, it's not quite loud enough yet, and then it kicks in, and it's definitely loud enough at that point. Yeah.
so at that point we then bring in the idea of the uncertainty as a metaphor as well for the human side as well. So we had to deal with the world as it is, to look past the dissolving foundations and see the capricious dance beneath the waves,
Love
the
that.
joy
Love
and
that one. That's a great one.
I like the word capricious. We must use that
Capricious.
more
Well done for
often.
getting the word capricious in. I think that's
Yeah, that's a
understanding.
difficult one to scan and rhyme, isn't it?
that's the problem.
Capricious dance beneath the waves, the joy and terrifying exposure of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the curse that makes us think we know for sure what's in another person's mind. We're then extending into the certainty in other areas, not just in physics. And the curse that makes us blind to changing facts and changing times.
Yeah.
Certainty. And I think
Tell you
that's
what, Matt, you did a very good job of remembering the lyrics here. This is going to be good for when the gigs come.
Yeah. Well, that's. I'm not sure it will necessarily be that reliable then, but
No.
something similar, hopefully.
There is some uncertainty. Yeah. Okay. And then the second song is Everything Changed. And I wrote that there's kind of a Rush feel to this album, and not the whole album, and you're not in any way copying them or anything like that, but it just sounds, more of a, the band Rush.
Yeah.
I know where you're coming from actually with that. Yeah.
I must admit, I've not listened to much Rush.
No, you're not. Yeah, you don't really. You haven't really heard much Rush at all, have you?
I don't think so. I mean, I've heard little sections, but it's not. It's certainly not something that's a conscious influence.
No,
I mean,
and I'm not saying that either. But
no, I'm not. I'm not kind of complaining about it. But it may well be that similar influences might have influenced them, and then indirectly then influenced us. That song is again a bit like the first one, setting the scene about. Well, I mean, everything changed, maybe a little bit of an exaggeration. In terms of philosophy of science, everything changed in terms of the paradigm shift of moving from an entirely clearly deterministic, predictable universe to a more uncertain universe.
I like the lyrics in that as well. The lyrics are really interesting because they're like little snippets of phrases, aren't they?
Yeah. So that one,
I remember sitting in the garden where we were trying to sort of just finish off the lyric of that, and I think you were 1 or 2 words away from it.
We had 1 or 2 words to finish on the day. Yeah. So that was one where that was slightly experimental how we handled it. I'm not sure what the word is. I mean, I know onomatopoeia for a word that sounds like the thing it's describing, but that's not exactly the word I'm looking for. Here we had the way of handling the phrasing representing the thing we're describing. So the individual words, we're doing the lyrics there as individual words representing these kind of quanta, and quanta means, in packets. So they're just done as these little dots, like little particles that are just popped out for the verses. But all the words, none of the words there are kind of random. They all mean stuff relating to quantum physics, and I think they generally also have the thing that the word that comes before relates to the word afterwards, and then again for the next ones, that both of them often they've got double meanings.
Okay, yeah, and that's true. Anything you wanted to add, Mark?
No, I mean, in terms, I don't still quite understand the lyric. I think at some point Matt was going to have to sit me down and actually explain what every thing is. I mean, there's things like cloud here and not.
So that's like the idea of a particle existing in a cloud of probability, and it's here, but it's also not here because it's in some diffuse thing, and it could be the other side of the universe. Probably not, but you can't be sure.
Yeah. I mean, was it jump shell, cloud here and not?
Yeah. So the way that quantum particles, they the energy levels. They jump between these energy levels without having these in between states. It's not in ordinary life, things could get faster and slower in a kind of gradual way, but here they go plop, plop.
Wow.
You're in a shell or you're in the next shell and you can't be between it.
Yeah. I remember
Which is
that
very
line now that we were looking for.
Interesting.
That line was the always sunlight to life line.
Oh yes. So
Always sunlight to life. So it's two
so
separate
that's
words.
about how chlorophyll works seems to be by the photons going through multiple paths at the same time and then picking the most energy efficient one. So that's the always, and so it's going through all these different ways at the same time, but also always sunlight. So it's the light coming from the sun to life, as in, photosynthesis
Green
being the
trees.
basis of life on the planet.
Yeah. Green
Yeah,
trees.
you said it's
green
right at the
skies.
start, Mark. You said, how you learn something with our albums. Yeah, I'm the same. I literally learn new stuff every time we release a new album as well. I'm a scholar as well.
Good. No, and more and more people should pick up your albums because we'd have a more educated music fan base. And I'm sure you do.
In the prog rock,
Sure yours is.
in the prog rock world, I know that we've got lots of supporters who will know far more about physics and maths than I do. I have an amateur interest in physics and the history of physics, but I don't claim to be an expert on that. Whereas we do have some, supporters who are genuine experts on this kind of thing. I did check our program notes with one of them who did agree that I got this. I haven't knowingly misled on any of the science, so obviously things are a bit there are compromises one has to make something fit a song, rather than a 20-page dissertation with formulae.
It's not it's a musical, yeah.
But hopefully there's nothing there that's actually wrong scientifically, if you see what I mean.
But he does have a medical degree, if I remember correctly, and
Yeah.
He absolutely knows medicine, at least from the standpoint of his whatever he studied in medicine. You have a doctorate.
I'm medicine. So my area was neuroscience, neuropathology in my youth. Yeah.
In his youth, you're still both of you guys are still young. When you look like this, then you can say no. I'm not old either. But at least my wife reminds me I'm not that old. And
None of us are.
thank God she does. Yeah. Every day I feel it. All right. So then we get into, the guts of this thing, the first big story, Copenhagen. And and that's the other thing about his or their music is you get this intrigue, this spy. It's almost like a James Bond movie, in a song. And there's a couple of songs, but this is the beginning of that. So talk a little bit. That was a big meeting and very scary one.
So
Yeah,
Heisenberg.
What could have happened?
So Heisenberg was good friends with Niels Bohr. They were together. They were some of the architects of quantum mechanics. And then the Second World War rather separated them because Heisenberg was on the German side and he was employed in the German nuclear research program. He was the head of that. And Niels Bohr was in occupied Copenhagen, and so very much on the other side of the divide.
I think you said he was Jewish as well, which absolutely puts him on the other.
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember the exact details. That he certainly had a degree of protection because of his fame, but he was at the time. But he had a lot of. They were very much not on the same side politically. And there was a meeting between them in Copenhagen, and that destroyed their friendship, and they didn't agree on what the contents of that meeting were. If you see what I mean. So, and we'll never know for sure. You know, Bohr thought that Heisenberg was asking for his help with making a German nuke, but it's unclear whether he was. So there are various interpretations that have been suggested. One is he was trying to get his former mentors help. One might be that he was looking for some kind of moral absolution from his friend. Another might be that he was trying to let Bohr know where they were up to so that they could get that information to the Allies. And another might be just that he may not have had that great an insight into himself to know what he was really intending. So, yeah, you have these two architects of the uncertainty principle having a meeting, both knowing that either or both could well be bugged at the time as well, and neither having the same recollection of what was said in the meeting. And you know, when I was reading about it, I was hoping that there would be some resolution, but actually there isn't. We will never know. We know that Heisenberg was asked by his government how much of a certain material that was needed for producing a nuclear weapon would be required, and he gave them a figure that was orders of magnitude higher than actually was the case. And we don't know whether he deliberately undermined the Nazi bomb, or whether he just got the calculation wrong, or again, whether he even knew what motivations may or may not have subconsciously affected him doing something so uncharacteristically inaccurate.
Yeah.
This was something to both a play, wasn't it, and a book.
Michael Frayn.
Michael Frayn, yeah,
and also a film with
a film, yes,
yeah, as well. So
yeah, I love the human element of that song. I love the breakdown of a friendship between two old, these two old friends, as it were, and
wasn't he his professor too, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was his mentor. Yeah, and this idea of how somebody may have thought they knew someone, and then you get new information that makes you think, oh, actually, maybe I never really understood you at all.
Yeah, somebody to be willing to help Hitler. Yeah, never expected that. A lot of people didn't expect what happened. Yeah,
and that question of who are you does occur in a couple of songs as well.
Yeah, so that's the recurrent theme throughout the album.
Theme that we use.
All right. And the next one I think is, cause and effect, but not necessarily in that order. I love your titles. Your titles of your songs are always great too. Talk a little bit about that. That is another great song. And the Hammond, thanks for the Hammond. That really sounded nice. And it may not have been a true Hammond, but go ahead.
It's not a true Hammond, believe me, because I played that bit and I know what it is. It's a great plug-in. Yeah, that's one of those things that I just... so Malcolm sent me that instrumental, and then with the instrumentals, I'll generally put a lot of stuff on, because you can get away with it more, because you haven't got a vocal that's going to, you've got to work around or get in the way. Still with the prospect of most of it not being used, but there were a good few things on there that you liked, weren't there, that we kept. And Hammond was one of them, wasn't it? That kind of...
Yeah, I like those Hammond sounds, yeah. They're good fun.
But it's always fun to hear you guys jam, and I know these are fantastic songs for the stage, where Mark probably is jumping around on these. What's it like? Have you played that one yet live, or?
Cause and effect as an instrumental. Well, one of the instrumentals we are planning on playing, the Ultraviolet Catastrophe. So that's
I was practicing it today. In fact, I was having a go on it today.
I've been practicing. Yeah, that does take a bit, but that's quite twiddly and difficult for me. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that is quite hard, that one. But we do intend to play that. It's nice. The guitar parts aren't what normally would fall under my fingers naturally, so it's a little bit of a challenge to train my fingers not just to do what they naturally would do in like a blues scale or something.
Yeah, and I'm doing that sort of Steve Harris, galloping bass line thing as well. So I've got to build my build my right arm up for that one.
Mm, mm. All right. Then we come to the title track. We insert a new principle, and it's fantastic. You go into a lot of depth. And I think this is more of that. And you brought Catherine back. Thank you. Please keep bringing her back.
We do try, yeah.
That flute is
He's
just
welcome on as much as the album as as we can squeeze it onto, quite frankly.
yeah, no, she's fantastic. But here we get, I think, and I'll let you tell a story about I think he was a baseball player.
Yeah, so this was I mean, some of these stories, if these had been fictional stories, they wouldn't have been very plausible. But nonetheless, they are true and happened. So in the Second World War, America wanted to send a spy to try and find whether the Germans were close to making a nuclear weapon. And they, for some reason, decided to send a professional baseball player rather than a physicist or a professional spy to do this. And he went around Europe in the looking in laboratories and interviewing scientists, and eventually the story ends up where he's sent to a public lecture that Heisenberg was giving in Zurich. And again, why the Nazis would send their lead nuclear scientist to do a public talk in a neutral country about, I mean, it turned out he didn't talk about nuclear bombs, but he was sent to the lecture with the instruction that he was meant to assassinate Heisenberg if he felt he was close to making a nuke. And he decided, though on what grounds I'm not sure how, that he wasn't and didn't assassinate him. But it just seemed such an odd story, this idea of going to this public talk, and he was in at a dinner with him afterwards. And he's got a pistol in one pocket and a cyanide capsule in the other for if he's captured. And quite how he's meant to be deciding how close they are to making a nuclear bomb is as if they were going to reveal that in this public physics lecture.
It's a fairly big decision on his shoulders to make as well, isn't it? To assassinate someone. As a baseball player, that's quite a lot to deal with.
It is a very, very strange story. But it's true.
That's why there's not so much. Well, there's not any fictional songs on this album. Because everything's either based in science or it's based, as Mountain says, on a historical true story. Because the true stories are fantastical enough without having to make them up.
Yeah, and all the quantum physics stuff. I mean, just on an intuitive level, it doesn't make intuitive sense. I mean, for most people, if you think that quantum physics makes intuitive sense, you probably haven't read enough about it, because it is really weird. I mean, there's lots of evidence that it's true, but it's very weird. It's kind of quite science fiction-y. I mean, underlying reality is quite science fiction-y. So on this one, it's all based on true things rather than some of our previous albums have been inspired by science fiction stories, whereas these are all science, fact, and history.
But that song in particular we talk about, though, the uncertainty principle. It's like a travel log. This one, isn't it? It takes you through literally different European cities, and it's a musical journey one. It's got different scenes. It's like a film. It feels like a film to me. Sort of 8 minutes.
And so and I was going to ask you, here we go. And what's the inspiration? I mean, I know the inspiration, but I mean, how did it inspire you to make the music that you made for it? That's what I'm trying to say.
I think the story initially, I read the story and I thought, yeah, um, I like the idea of doing something from the perspective of Moberg, the secret agent, of him going into this situation, but also it being, what am I doing here? How am I meant to be judging this? In hindsight, having read a bit more about him and his personality, I'm not not sure he would necessarily have been that self-questioning. I don't know, but that was not necessarily the impression I got from one of his biographies I read. But I wrote most of the lyrics before having read that biography. So, but it's from the perspective of somebody out of their depth in a situation like that and having to make a decision. It's that idea of decision making under uncertainty. He's not got all the information he needs, but it's got huge consequences if he gets it wrong.
And during
Did you
that
say though
time,
about him? Sorry, Mark. Didn't you say about him reporting back to his superiors though, and asking what he was up to, and he was swanning around Europe on?
Oh yeah, he got sacked from being a spy in the end because he refused to send in proper expense forms, and
something like
he
that.
he seemed to manage to find very expensive hotels and restaurants in the bits that weren't bombed out of recently liberated cities. Um, he was he does come across as quite a strange person from his from what I've read of him. Yeah.
But a lot of people during that time were like, my country wants me to do this. I'm patriotic.
Mhm.
And I'll do this, even though I'm not ready for it. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, maybe completely. And but the government wants me to do it.
Oh, I can certainly see that motivation, but I also think that if I was in that situation, I wouldn't necessarily go to the most expensive hotel. You know, that
Oh,
idea
right.
of,
No,
the
no.
people that your other countrymen who are also taking part in that war are probably not having a nice time in hotels,
No.
and mm, it feels a bit questionable to me to be wasting resources in that way. But
Well, and he must have thought maybe he could get away with it in baseball.
Mm.
They'd approve whatever he wanted to do, staying in hotels and things like that. It'll be like that in government, but in government, there's receipts and there's checks and balances. There's people that will look at all this and say just what you said. What the hell are you doing? Did we lose you?
You still there, Mel? Mhm. Have we lost him? No, he's back.
Sorry, hello, I lost you there. Am I back?
You are back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Apologies, I don't know what happened there.
Do you want me to repeat it?
That's right, I didn't hear that. Yeah, my internet
Okay.
cut out.
So basically, yeah, there's this patriotic thing, but at the same time, maybe in baseball, there was a little more leniency about, you can go and have fun, rent a hotel on the company, on the baseball team.
Mm,
And he probably said, well, it's probably the same government, but no, there are receipts and Congress is looking at this. Other people are going to look at these receipts later. And he just had this carefree,
yeah.
sports. I don't know. That's just my theory.
Yeah, I mean, he had later on in life when, as far as we know, he wasn't working as a spy, or at least almost all the time he wasn't working as a spy. He used to just, for many years, he never had a home. He would just turn up with a suitcase in a city, phone up an acquaintance or friend, and say, "Oh, I'm happen to be in this city," and then be kind of hinting, "Oh, I can't talk about why I'm here." Hinting that he was doing spying when he was no longer doing spying,
Oh, wow.
and then staying for a few weeks in people's,
On
spare
their
bedrooms,
on their
and then moving
yeah.
on to another city, and he did that for years. Yeah.
Hmm. All right. Anything else you wanted to add to that song, Mark? Or just in
Well,
terms
so
of
about
the music, because
Catherine's contributions on that. Yeah, Catherine's
okay.
contributions are fantastic. She came at it with a very we basically played the music, and she had an idea. Was it her idea to have the kind of the whispering?
Oh yeah. The those enigmatic sounds at the beginning and end. That was her
Yeah,
idea.
it's all flute noises, isn't it? There's not
Mm,
really notes in there at the start of it.
mm,
It just builds a kind of atmosphere,
It
doesn't
does.
it?
mm.
And then she sort of launches into the big melody at the start. But yeah, it's really good fun actually having Kathy on board for those sort of things.
And then you go inside the Atom with an incredible instrumental. You guys want to talk about how much fun that was?
I think that's one of the ones that brings your more modern classical
Yeah,
side
the
into it,
classical
isn't it?
post-minimalist type side. Yeah.
There's a insistent repeating,
Mm.
almost niggly
Yeah, yeah.
thing about that song that kind of, you know,
Oh,
that
you're
I
going.
really like actually. I really like it. And then I think it goes to the end of it. I think it goes into almost like Mike Oldfield territory.
Oh yeah, yeah,
The last
Mm.
section, it really reminds me of something that Mike
yes,
Oldfield would do. It's got a kind of just
Mm.
the melody of it.
yeah.
Mm. I mean, the idea is it starts off as these like pointillistic dots of music. I don't know, I was saying like these little
Mhm.
repeated notes, but different repeated notes coming on different instruments, different parts of this sound, the stereo spectrum. And then gradually it coalesces into something that's much more with an obvious, the structure becomes apparent then over time, then
Yeah,
with a big
it
guitar solo
reveals
over it.
itself, doesn't it? Yes,
Yeah. So the idea was a bit like if you think of a pointillist painting that starts off looking like they're just random dots, and then gradually it turns out to be a picture.
Yes. Yep. All right. The think tank. So I've studied game theory from a political standpoint. That was my major was political science, and you're coming at it from a different medical and maybe physics. Um, Talk about what that game theory is all about, because a lot of people are thinking something completely different.
Mhm.
But this actually happened in post-war world, and you had political leaders who were actually like Reagan and well, a lot of them that were actually thinking we could win a world war, a nuclear war. There's a way we could do this with, yes, we'd suffer some losses, but there'd be some plausible way of winning, taking over the world and rebuilding it, whatever. I mean, it was insane. We know that now, and now that it's been in the news and everything. But describe what that's like and how that created this song.
So,
Created this song.
and the song was inspired by Daniel Ellsberg had uh, somebody wrote about his experiences of having worked in the Rand Corporation. So the Rand Corporation was a private sector thing, but it was employed largely by the American military to design nuclear war strategies and other defense theoretical work. And he was writing about spending the day with perfectly pleasant colleagues, designing how to drop the missiles so that they would maximize the number of fatalities, and then going off for a nice lunch at the.
Yeah.
This was in California as well? Was it in sunny California? So amongst palm trees and things, and
and then he just had he described something about suddenly looking around him and it feeling like, just a minute, what are we doing? What are we monsters? Kind of thing. And it was that sudden moment of revelation, of self-perception that I was aiming at. But in terms of what game theory is, this was the kind of mathematical expression of. I mean, originally it was looking at how you do strategies in a game, but then it was expanded into how you do it for nuclear wars, and it's the decision making in uncertainty. So you don't know what the other person's going to do, what strategy is right. When you're trying to predict what the other person's going to do. So that's how it fits in with the uncertainty thing, as well as the quantum physics directly leading to nuclear weapons. And yeah, these abstract models of game theory telling you whether you should or shouldn't use a nuclear weapon seem very separated emotionally from the actual consequences of the action. And I think, personally, I think that's a lot of these models were vastly oversimplified. And then if you just assume that the model is reality, you can do some very unwise things.
And just to go into a little more depth, you did a good job explaining it, but the think tank was the military industrial complex. And the sad part about this, yes, you had the military involved. Yes, you had private companies. But the part that always bothers me is you had the educational support, the education system, the universities is what I'm trying to say. All the research, all the money spent to help figure out these games and whether or not we should even go down this road. That's what irritates me probably the most. I don't like it, but it is it's always sad to see, people that should be doing things to help improve the world are involved with maybe helping destroy it. And it's very ironic. Yeah.
I think some of the oversimplified game theory models have encouraged people to think that rather selfish, damaging actions are logical or scientific, when I think that's a misunderstanding. So one of the most famous ones that people talk about is the prisoner's dilemma, where, if you the famous stories, you have two people arrested, and if do you tell on the other one or not? And the way that it's set up is that whatever the other person chooses, if you are the traitor, then you do better than you otherwise would have done. And that's sometimes used as to try and justify selfishness, as if that's somehow rational. But that assumes that you only have one round of a game. And in almost all human contexts, it's about building relationships with people over time. And if you've previously been this betraying figure, you're in the long run not likely to do so well, whether it's as an individual or as a country or an ideology. I think there's been some experimental evidence as well. If you've got a sort of an iterated prisoner's dilemma, as in you keep going round and round, then actually a strategy of, if you start to be generous with things you can afford to lose, and then if the other person trusts you, you gradually build up trust and an interdependency. And I think there's at least as much mathematical and intellectual support for that as a model as there is for a selfish interpretation of game theories. But the ones that they were using, I think, in the 1950s were very, very simplified models, which I don't think were very realistic ways of looking at human behavior.
We still have a song there, don't we, Malcolm, potentially? In
the we do have a song about the prisoner's dilemma, which came close to being on this album, but didn't quite fit. But is
I can't remember if it's a lyrical song or an instrumental, but the way you've described it there.
Yeah, we have a partially done lyric on that topic, so it's not. It may well be something we return to.
Yeah,
could be the next album. We'll see. We're part of.
Yeah. Although we have touched on game theory in alluded to it in some of our previous songs. Yeah.
That song, though, I mean, the Think Tank still has one of my favourite lyrics on the whole album, which still chills me every time I hear it. Which is I've actually got it here in front of me. Sitting at the table while finishing my milkshake, I saw a non-existent flash incinerate the other diners.
Yeah,
it's when the guy just suddenly realizes, as you say, what am I doing here?
Yeah,
and it's just such a powerful image. It really is. It's a massively powerful image.
Very good. Then we come to the hero, or hopefully we always have somebody that is willing to do this, and we're all hoping and praying that somebody's going to see the light and change things that are happening right now in America. Um, but talk about this story. It's I think it's one of the best on the album, and I'm so
Thank you.
happy you highlighted this because I didn't know directly about this
Yeah.
person,
Mm.
but
Me neither, until Malcolm wrote about it. No.
So I think, sometimes people look back and say, well, we've had nuclear weapons for X number of years and they've only been used in warfare once, as if this is somehow a success. But we're talking about a relatively small period of time for them not to have accidentally been used. And there have been, I think, more historical incidents where we've come very close to disaster than most people may be aware of. And so there's one example is this Vasily Arkhipov, who was one of the commanders of a nuclear submarine. It was in the Cuban Missile Crisis. They were sort of trapped underwater. They couldn't come up because of there were American ships above, but they couldn't get through to Moscow on their radios. Turned out there was some technical fault, but the expectation in that situation was that it was because World War III had started, and therefore that they should fire their missiles at the American aircraft carrier. Normally, it required two people on the boat to agree to fire. He happened to be on this ship, which he wouldn't normally have been on, and because of his rank, he had a veto, and it would have needed three of them to agree. The other two did agree and were pressurizing him to launch, and he refused. So I think there are important times in history when there are expectations on people to do certain things, but it takes the courage and humanity to say no when you're told to do something inhuman.
And I think I did a little research on it, but didn't do enough. Whatever happened to him, he must have defected because he couldn't go back to Russia. But
Well, he did actually stay there.
Really?
He did carry on working in the Navy, but he was kind
Did he
of
make it?
he did have yeah, he had problems. He was told it would have been better if they drowned. Which is where that line in the song comes from. And it was kind of like hidden away, I think. And it was only many, many years later that his story came out. And he apparently was quite a quiet person, not really talking much about it, but his wife drew attention to it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If you're living over there, I wouldn't. Yeah, but yeah, talk about the music. The story is fantastic, and if you don't get drawn into that story, the music will do it. So
It actually sounds like being on a submarine. I'm not quite sure how we did
There's a ping. There's a ping sound on it.
There is a ping sound going on, admittedly.
Yeah.
But it has got a claustrophobic,
Yeah.
being in a cylinder feel to it. I don't know how to describe that.
We did use some of the way we handled the reverb was a bit different to on the rest of the album, in that we did want that claustrophobia, which we wouldn't normally prefer to have, but it is meant to feel claustrophobic.
It's closed in, isn't it, as opposed to being open. Yeah.
And they say the guitar solo as well is much more angular and
pressurized, isn't it? Almost, it's got a pressure.
Rather than usually I would play more lyrically, whereas this one was more angular and agitated. It's probably the most not exactly metalish, but some metal elements to it in terms of some of the guitar sounds. A sort of a relentless sense to it as well, that they're kind of trapped in this situation that's pushing them in a certain direction, that if they didn't resist it, they would end up going down a certain path.
But then the
And that-
choruses sort of open up more, don't they? And they're kind of more.
Yeah. Then bring in the humanity of the person who chooses
Yeah.
to say no, and
Yeah.
also the way the lyrics work. It starts off as describing somebody as in a more distant way. It's a he and then it becomes a you, and then it becomes a we, and then it becomes an I, as it becomes more and more about actually taking personal responsibility.
And imagine not only having to make that decision, but having to make that decision leagues under the sea. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, and
good.
The lack of air and the
yeah. That was very, very hot. The air cleaning systems were failing. So when the carbon dioxide gets high in the air, you feel really kind of panicky and suffocating. And trying to make decisions in that kind of situation must be hideous.
Yeah.
But we're still here, so you know.
Thank goodness. Yeah, thank goodness he didn't pull the trigger. Yeah.
Okay. And there are other similar stories of like there was one that isn't on the album, but that I was wondering about writing a song about the one where the person who's looking at the radar things for incoming missiles, who was given a clear signal that there was incoming attack, and he should have reported it upwards. And when he was asked, he said, "Oh no, it was a computer error." But he didn't know that at the time. That was his assumption, and it did. It turned out to be a flock of birds. But the signals had all come across as this is an attack. So
isn't
but also got
isn't that the subject of 99 Luftballons? Maybe.
I think it might be actually. I think you're right. Yeah, I think it is.
It triggered the minute you said the flock. I think because at the end of that video, I think there's a flock of birds or something. But if everyone knows what we're talking about.
A song called Broken Arrow as well, didn't
Oh yes, that was another one we wrote that we almost put on the album, but when we had to trim things down to fit on the album, and that was one that we there was a time when a farm in America had a nuclear weapon dropped on it by accident from an American plane. And it caused quite some consternation. It didn't go off.
I was going to say it didn't go off, but
it did get dropped out of a plane into a farm.
Yeah,
and it turned out that there was some problem that the button for opening the bomb doors was right next to another button to do something else. And it was bad ergonomics.
Can you imagine that? You're finding that on your farm as you're, taking down the wheat or the corn, and look at what's laying there. Yeah,
that's the phrase. Though, isn't it? It's a recognised phrase they use, isn't it? Broken arrow.
So the word, broken arrow is the word for apparently for if you've dropped you've got a missing nuke somewhere, and there are quite a lot of missing nuclear weapons, which is I think quite concerning. There's one in I think it's in the Arctic. I think it's the Arctic. It's somewhere very icy that it got dropped from a great height by accident and wasn't able to be recovered. And
think about how many are probably in the Pacific. Way out in the southeast or in the Pacific. They did so much. We were watching this movie about New Guinea or something, or a show about New Guinea, and I'm thinking, oh my God, think of all the testing done out there, and how many of those are still somewhere at the bottom of the ocean, or
So I mean there are lots of stories. Another worrying story that we never used, but I was listening to in our research is for the tactical nuclear weapons. There was for a launch code for intercontinental missiles. There was a safety review ordered by the then president, and it was found that there was no password protection type thing for the launching. It was just you had a phone call from the president to say launch, and then the person presses the button, but they didn't have a code. And so they instituted a thing, but the Air Force were concerned that having to put in a code would delay things too much.
Isn't that a shame? No.
So they put the code as 00000
Oh.
and informed their users that was what the code was.
That's my PIN number. How do they know that? It's not, by the way.
When you hear these things, you're like, no, that can't be true. It really was, yeah.
Truth is stranger than fiction, yeah.
Okay, and they also did like a small EP, 3 songs. One of them is Between Two Worlds. You want to talk a little bit about that? And it's on the album as well, right?
Yeah, so that song is about. So I had years ago, I was having an MRI scan, and while I was having the scan, it occurred to me that until the actual results of the scan have been read, it's like being a Schrodinger cat where you've got these two very different worlds simultaneously coexisting for your future. And that when you then get the result, that suddenly it's as if the quantum superposition of those two states has been collapsed. I'm not saying it really is that. It's a metaphorical thing. But it does feel like you're living between two worlds, and then had experiences with that with family, cancer experiences. So the song is meant to be from the perspective of somebody having an MRI scan to find out whether a cancer has spread, and that while waiting for that result, you've got these two worlds that are simultaneously real.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest one to record on the album.
It was the hardest thing to do. It was the last thing we did, and it was the hardest thing that we did as well. It went through at least 6 or 7 different iterations before we were happy with it.
We tried it in versions with guitar. Originally, it was written on guitar. Tried it with versions with guitar or with keyboard, with a click track, without a click track,
different keys, different keys.
And in the end, we went for a very stripped down, simple version.
And the versions are different on the EP and the album?
No, they're the same on the album and the EP, but we did go through we went through lots of different arrangements of it and it never felt quite right until we then just did a very simple thing of basically piano and voice with just a little bit of strings and a little bit of synth, but basically piano and voice.
Yeah, it did have the emotional heft that it needed. It required really until we just stripped it right back to Malcolm's voice and a piano and the little string thing that's on there. So
all right, and then finally the closing song, Living with Uncertainty, and explaining how we all need to come to that realization because the world is constantly changing as we see.
Yeah, I mean, that song is, it's a natural instinct to try and want to close down uncertainty, but realistically, we never know when the next tragedy is going to happen. We can't protect ourselves from everything. And I think, I, as many other people, have a tendency to, be quite anxious and to let worrying about the future get in the way of enjoying what we have. So that's part of the song. And then the other aspect of the song is, as well as learning to accept that we might be wrong. So, and it's okay to accept that you might be wrong. So it's about, again, that it's the summing up of that whole certainty thing of, okay, it's not just everybody else might be wrong, but actually I might be wrong. And as a species, I think we're very good at accepting that other people might be mistaken and not very good at questioning ourselves. And so that's why the song ends hopefully quite positively, but on that sense of I might be wrong.
No, it is a positive thing. We wrote it as a positive song, didn't we? We're embracing the idea of uncertainty and embracing the idea that we should be questioning ourselves.
Yeah.
And they're
It's not a weakness to be uncertain.
Yeah.
all right. And I'm busily trying to bring up the EP here. The other two songs that you sang are
Oh yeah, so on that we have then
go
the
ahead.
second track we had on the EP is Helgoland, which was originally written for the album because Helgoland is where Heisenberg went on a holiday and where he came up with his breakthrough in quantum physics. It ended up not fitting because we wanted to keep that chronological sequence, but also we had to think about musically how the album flows. So it ended up not fitting on the album, but still wanted to do something with it. So that's the
When we
second track.
produced it, this wasn't right because I think there were too many instrumental tracks next to each other, or
With slightly similar structures as well.
slightly different structures. Yeah, so we didn't want to waste it. It was too good to waste.
No, it's a great song, great instrumental song.
And then the third track is a live version of "I'm Tired and Everything Hurts," which is a fairly aggressive song about my experiences of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, chronic pain, invisible disability, and the difficulty of knowing how to respond to the well-intentioned question of "How are you?" when it's just done as a social nicety.
And this was recorded live in 2024 at the Prague for Pert Festival, which I
Yes.
think you guys are regulars there now, aren't you? It feels like it, and that's good.
I think we've played there a couple of times, and we're playing at the pre-festival party this year.
Yeah, we'll be on the Thursday, won't we, this year?
Yeah.
Before the festival starts on the Friday and Saturday. But
Yeah,
always
we're
happy to go back to Abingdon. Yeah,
we have a great time there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a good time there. So this time we're kind of hosting a party like type musical event the night before the official festival.
So it wasn't.
And last year we were.
It wasn't too far off to mention Rush. No, I'm kidding. But he was great. The professor of the drums, Neil Peart.
Yeah.
Oh, was one of the best.
In case some people out there don't know who he was. I don't know how you would miss that, but anyway, it's possible. Can't assume, as you said, you can't assume that people know everything. We don't. But and the EP came out as sort of a teaser before the album.
Yeah.
You could kind of get a feel for what was coming from the album. I know we just kind of talked about it in reverse, but thank you for that. And you think you'll do that again for the next album? And not to, push you ahead because I know you're already working on it, but are you working on the next album? And do you have any thoughts?
We've got material there. Yeah, we've got material sitting in a folder already called Hodgia 9 on the computers that we can delve into and start looking at some point. Are there a couple of finished songs there already, Malcolm? I can't remember.
There are several songs that are basically finished, but haven't had the right album context to be in yet.
Yeah, that's true.
So basically, it depends on what we have as our theme or concept, or
our big picture.
Yeah. So then working out whether or not any of the existing material we've got fits that theme, or whether it's all stuff written from scratch to fit that whatever is the story or idea. I mean, there are lots and lots of different possible themes that do interest me, but we'll have to discuss which one to focus on next.
But every time we put out a single as well, we always try and put out a non-album track of some sort. Yeah, we always like to do that, so we give that extra.
Yeah,
going by the singles.
Definitely. And I think you are definitely going to tour this. Is it going to be more of a festival type of tour, or do you think you'll do a full-blown Uncertainty tour?
Well, we have a launch event, and then we've got a variety of festivals during the year. So
We've never actually done a tour as such, haven't we? In terms of lots of dates, very concentrated
Yeah,
up and
You're
down
right.
the country.
Yeah.
We don't really work that way, do we? In
I mean,
terms of
it's also partly because of my physical challenges and I can't drive. It tends to be isolated dates that we go off for. I mean, we're
yeah,
open-minded about things in the future, but
yeah.
also
Trying to organise a
pragmatic.
tour as well. It's really expensive as well. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
very expensive to tour now. And trying to ensure that enough people come to those gigs as well, so you're not scaring the promoters off, and that sort of thing. It's hard touring. It really is. Even putting on a 7 or 8 date tour is expensive. But
And Malcolm,
we'd like to get back up to Scotland at some point. I've never
Yeah.
played, down the southwest. We've never really done sort of say Newcastle. We've never played
That's
Manchester.
true.
So
Yeah.
there's lots of places in the UK we still haven't touched in terms of cities that I would love to play.
Mm.
and Malcolm,
And try and get back to Europe. Yeah.
you seem to be doing better, but I mean, I hope you're okay. And is health improving? I hope for you.
No. Well,
Is the short answer.
I'm struggling with additional problems as well now. I've got a problem with my retinas that are degenerating.
Yeah, I read that.
That's frustrating, and the spinal stuff is up and down. So I have good days and good months and less good times. So I'm not wanting to make a fuss, but we have to be pragmatic with how we design things. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have the setup that we do with the two of us and a laptop for live gigs. Makes it pragmatic for us to put on to keep playing. Because for me, keeping playing is extremely important. Performing live is such an important part of maintaining my mental health, basically. That I am very committed to keeping playing until I drop.
And you're
And then
not.
I'll just pick him up and
Or
carry him
until I
around.
fall off stage or whatever, like Malcolm keeps worrying about.
It'll become
Yeah.
my problem at that point anyway, and we'll deal
Yeah.
with it.
Is he?
Or even if I fall off stage, I'll probably carry on playing from the floor. It'll be fine.
What do you think, Mark? This is. I've seen him. We've interviewed many times, but he seems to be very positive today, and I like that. I'm not saying you can't. Have dark days. Definitely, we all
Well,
do.
yeah, I mean, don't forget. I mean, as I say, Malcolm is one of my oldest friends. We've known each other since we were sort of 11 years old. So, I love him like a brother. I've seen him at his lowest, and I've seen him, when he's on really good form as well. So, we'll get through it. Whatever happens, we'll get through it. But I enjoy again the whole getting on stage thing. It is so important to me as well. I think both of us, when we hit that stage, we've got such a natural rapport with each other as well.
Yeah.
It's such good fun. It's such good fun. So
yeah, and we know we've got each other's backs. It's not like we would argue on stage or anything like that. You see some of the videos of bands beating each other up on stage, and it's very much not like that. It's you know that you've got that support with you. Makes a big difference. Yeah, and I think in terms of the positivity thing, so I think we're realistic about the negative things in life, but it's that sense of looking into the abyss with a bit of a chuckle. It's not denying it's there, but it's also not letting it rule your life.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Well, did you guys have anything you wanted to add about the album tours? This is the other thing I was going to ask you. Any kind of collaborations in the future, or you guys are a tight-knit group and no need for that, or
you mean what, us as Hats Off with other people?
But I think we're potentially open-minded. We haven't had anything specific at the moment, but we're open-minded.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. Anyone, yeah.
I think Mark and I have said before that it would be interesting one day just to have, like, if you had a remote recording location and you had a different person coming in for a day each day for 2 weeks or something, and just seeing what you create. I think that'd be great
Mm.
fun.
That would be, yeah, that would absolutely. Well, we might be doing something in that realm in the future, trying to bring all of you guys in England together. I'll tell you more about it. I'm trying it here in Bellingham first. I'm going to try to get 36 bands together on Zoom, and yeah, that's going to be interesting how that works
Good
out.
luck with that.
Huh?
It's hard to get 5 blokes in a room normally.
I say, oh yeah, and we're gonna give it a try here, March 15th. So anyone that's listening, I'm gonna definitely put a lot of information up.
Yeah, please do.
But we're
I'm
gonna.
intrigued.
Oh, I can't wait for this to happen. And at the same time, nervous because I hope it shows up and and it works out the way we've planned it. But it's hopefully going to be a chance for everyone to meet each other on that interview, and then also collaborate and work
Mm.
together to help Bellingham and Washington music. And I'd love to be able to do this for all over the world and just take little niches of countries and do this. And I've definitely thought about doing it in the UK. I've got friends and bands that I've interviewed, so it may
Well,
be.
mark us down as being
But,
interested. Definitely, we'll be up for that.
all right, well, let's see how this one goes. I'm hoping everything goes as planned, and there's always uncertainty. That's perfect.
Absolutely, yeah.
Embrace it.
So we don't know what's going to happen, but if it all works out, I'd like to not replicate it,
Yeah.
but do it throughout the world and just see what happens. And sometimes just getting people together like this, you find out things you never would have even thought of. So I believe in the art of collaboration, and like you say, it doesn't always work out, and people may not want to collaborate, and they're happy doing what they're doing. But I think it gives everyone an open mind and at least a chance for an open mind. So yeah, more on that. Yeah, we're in March now, and we're all trying to hunker down and really figure out what we're going to be talking about and who's going to talk and how it's going to. That in itself is not a game theory, but it's there's a lot of
logistical challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very
So,
much for all your support.
You guys
We do
have
very much
anything else
appreciate
that
it.
you wanted to say? I always end up doing that.
Yeah, I just want, well, I certainly we would like to say thank you very much for all your support. We do very much appreciate it.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. Anything else? Get out there, people, and get this album. It is full of mystery, full of intrigue, full of great music. You're going to learn from it. And what more could you want? It's just.
Well, hatsoffgentleman.com will take you to our website, won't it? And we've got various distributors who are helping us out in. We've taken on a distributor in the States, haven't we, recently?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of distributors that cover the States. So at the moment, if you buy just directly from us, it's so complicated for us to post things. It's quite expensive. But if you go via one of the distributors, that can be actually work out as cheaper if you're buying from America or mainland Europe.
All right. Well, definitely, like I say, give this a chance. Please listen to it. And once you listen to this, hopefully you'll go back and listen to the rest of the catalog because it's just as intriguing. And thank you guys both for coming on here on a Sunday and for all you do. Really, your music is just inspirational, intriguing. It's just draws you in. There's a better word for that, but that's the real feeling. I mean, you want to hear this album. You want to hear
Thank you.
what he's going to be talking about this time.
Mhm.
You know, it's really good. It's like,
Thanks, Mark.
well,
Thank you very much.
it's kind of like a novel, Stephen King now. You like a series where you want to see what he's going to
Mm.
next. So yeah, it's great. Or they.
Thank you very much.
I shouldn't be saying he, they, what they are going to uncover next, and looking forward to the next one. Well, thank you very much. And anything else you guys, Mark, we didn't give you a chance. Anything else you want to say?
No, no, as Malcolm says, I mean, yeah, just huge thanks to everyone who listens to our music, really, and supports us. You know, we couldn't wish for anything else.
Yeah, we are very aware that there's more music out there than anybody could plausibly listen to in a lifetime, and if anybody takes the time to listen to our music, that's something we're extremely grateful for.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, but thanks again, guys. And
Thanks a lot.
all right, but hang in here. We'll just talk for a brief second here. Thanks again.